What if I told you some of Chevy's most powerful, innovative engines were never meant to survive? Buried by politics, bad press, and changing times, these mechanical legends were silenced. Not because they failed, but because they scared the system. Here is the truth behind Chevy's banned engines being louder than their exhaust. 1. Chevy Turbo Air 6. The Chevy Turbo Air 6 engine was once a powerful choice for the Chevrolet Corvair, but it didn't last long. Introduced in the 1960s, this engine had a turbocharger, which made it more powerful than the regular version of the Corvair's engine. In fact, the turbocharged engine almost doubled the horsepower, making it a thrilling option for performance lovers. It was available in the Corsa model, which was a sportier version of the Corvair. Despite its turbo boost, the Chevy Turbo Air 6 had some problems. The engine was not very reliable, and owners faced issues with maintenance. Also, compared to other muscle cars of the time, it didn't offer a huge improvement in speed or performance. On top of that, the engine wasn't very fuel efficient and could cause overheating if the fan belt slipped off. This made the car hard to maintain and left many buyers disappointed. The real blow came from the bad press surrounding the Corvair. Ralph Nader's book, Unsafe at Any Speed, criticized the car for its safety issues. This caused people to see the Corvair in a negative light. Sales dropped, especially in 1966, and Chevy decided to discontinue the Turbo Air 6 engine. Though the engine was unique and powerful for its time, it didn't win over enough fans to overcome its flaws. The Corvair itself became known for its weird design, and the troubles with the Turbo Air 6 led to its end. Today, the Corvair still has a small group of dedicated fans, but it remains a forgotten piece of automotive history. 2. Chevy 302 DZ V8. The Chevy 302 DZ V8 was a powerful engine used in the Chevrolet Camaro during the 1960s. It was built to meet the SCCA Trans Am Racing Series engine size limit of 305 cubic inches. However, the engine's design, which used a larger bore and a shorter stroke, made it a special type of engine. This design was seen as an advantage for Chevrolet, and it led to the engine being banned from the racing series. Beyond this, the engine was built for high performance with a horsepower rating of 290, though it was rumored that it was actually more powerful than advertised. The 302 DZ V8 engine was designed with a compression ratio of 11.0 to 1, which gave it a significant boost in performance compared to its competitors. The engine became famous because it was used in the Z/28 Camaro, which was a popular muscle car at the time. It wasn't just the power that made the 302 DZ V8 special, but its versatility as well. This engine could fit into many different cars, and it was often used in street rods and even in some Ford cars, which showed its popularity. Let's rewind time. In racing, the 302 DZ V8 dominated the 1968 and 1969 Trans Am series, with Chevrolet winning 8 out of 12 races. However, the success of the engine raised suspicions, and it was soon banned by the racing authorities. The engine was seen as too advanced for the competition, and many felt that Chevrolet had found a way to gain an unfair advantage. As a result, the 302 DZ V8 was discontinued, and it became a legendary part of automotive history. 3. Chevy 267 Vice 8. The Chevy 267 V8 was a small engine introduced in 1979, designed for cars like the Chevrolet Camaro, Monte Carlo, and Malibu. It had a 4.4-liter V8 design, which used a small 3.5-inch bore. This was the smallest bore of any Chevy small-block V8 engine. Despite its small size, the 267 V8 had some major issues. One of the biggest problems was its power. With only 125 horsepower and 215 pound-feet of torque when it first came out, the engine didn't have the strength to compete with larger, more powerful V8 engines. Here's the build. The engine's small bore made it tough to increase its power, even with modifications. This meant it wasn't very popular among car enthusiasts or drivers looking for performance. Moreover, emissions concerns were another factor that hurt the engine's future. The design didn't work well with the stricter emission standards coming into play during the 1980s, and it couldn't meet the required limits by 1982. But hold on! As car manufacturers started focusing on fuel efficiency and advanced engine technology, smaller engines that could still produce power became more common. The 267 V8 was too outdated and inefficient, especially when compared to newer engines. Additionally, it was expensive to make and took up too much space under the hood. Due to its poor performance, lack of power, and inability to meet emission standards, the Chevy 267 V8 was discontinued and replaced by the 305 V8, which was a more efficient and powerful engine. While the 267 V8 had a brief life, it didn't have the lasting impact Chevy had hoped for. 4. Chevy 250 Turbo Thrift Inline 6. The Chevy 250 Turbo Thrift Inline 6 engine was introduced in 1966 and became popular for its smooth operation and fuel efficiency. It had a 3.875-inch bore and a 3.53-inch stroke, which made it a 4.1-liter engine. It was designed with an integrated cylinder head and intake manifold, which helped with low-end torque and better fuel economy. In 1979, it got an upgrade with a 2-barrel intake and a Rochester Varijet carburetor for trucks and vans, further improving its performance. Despite its good features, the engine started to fade out of production. By the late 1970s, the Chevy 250 was slowly replaced by smaller V6 engines, like the Chevrolet 202-29, which offered similar power but were more efficient. This change led to the discontinuation of the Chevy 250 in full-sized cars after the 1973 model year. It was the first time since 1928 that a full-size Chevrolet had no 6-cylinder option. Digging into details. While the engine was still used in trucks until 1984, the shift towards more powerful V8 engines and the growing preference for smaller, more efficient engines meant that the 250 was no longer in high demand. When Chevrolet downsized its B-body line in 1977, the 250 was briefly reintroduced, mainly because the smaller chassis made it a better fit for the car's design. Ultimately, the Chevy 250 Turbo Thrift Inline 6 was discontinued due to declining sales, the rise of V8 engines, and the need for more efficient power sources. This marked the end of an era for the classic straight-six engine in Chevrolet's full-sized cars. 5. Chevy LS 6454 V8 The Chevy LS 6454 V8 engine was one of the most powerful engines available in the 1970 and 1971 Chevy SS and Corvette models. It was introduced when General Motors lifted its internal rule that limited engines in intermediate cars to 400 cubic inches. This change allowed Chevrolet to build the big block 454 engine, and the LS6 version was designed for ultimate performance. It had a 4.2-inch bore and a 4-inch stroke, with a compression ratio of 11.25 to 1. This made it capable of producing an impressive 450 horsepower, more than any other engine available for the Chevelle or even the Corvette at the time. What's it packing? The LS6 came with a number of upgrades over the standard 4.54 engine, including better cylinder heads, a hotter camshaft, and a larger carburetor. These features helped the LS6 Chevelle SS reach 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.5 seconds, and it could run the quarter mile in just over 13 seconds. This made it one of the fastest muscle cars of its time, with more power than even the famous HEMI engine from Chrysler. However, the LS6 wasn't around for long. After 1971, the LS6 was discontinued due to stricter emissions regulations and the rising cost of fuel. The big block engines like the LS6 were also becoming less popular as customers started demanding more fuel-efficient cars. So, while the LS6 was an iconic and powerful engine, its production came to an end as the automotive industry shifted toward smaller, more efficient engines. It wasn't banned, but it disappeared as the world of muscle cars began to change. 6. Chevy 427 Tall Deck V8. The Chevrolet 427 Tall Deck V8 engine was a powerful engine that was mainly used for racing. It wasn't really banned, but it did face many restrictions. General Motors had a rule that stopped its cars from racing, and the 427 Tall Deck engine was just too strong for street use. The engine was known for its impressive performance, but GM downplayed its power to avoid attracting buyers who might misuse it. Now the tech part. The design of the engine made it difficult to adapt to normal road cars. The 427 Tall Deck had advanced features like forged internals, aluminum heads, and a large carburetor. While these made the engine powerful, they also made it harder to mass-produce and use in everyday cars. GM tried to avoid using this engine for street cars because it would easily break the rules for racing. The 427 Tall Deck was mostly used in racing cars. The L88 version of the engine was the most famous, known for its high performance. However, because of its power and advanced design, it wasn't suitable for regular use on the streets. The engine was mainly used in factory-backed racing teams, where it could really show off its strength. Power met problems. The 427 Tall Deck 5.8 engine wasn't banned, but the racing restrictions and its tough design led to its limited use. This powerful engine helped GM make an impact in racing, but its use was reduced as technology and racing rules changed. It remains an iconic engine in the history of performance cars. 7. Chevrolet 427 ZL1 Aluminum V8. The Chevrolet 427 ZL1 Aluminum V8 engine is one of the most legendary engines from the muscle car era, and many car enthusiasts consider it the best Chevrolet engine ever made. It was originally designed in 1968 for road racing, specifically for Can-Am races, but it quickly became famous for being installed in special 1969 Camaros and Corvettes. What made it so special was that it was an all-aluminum engine, which made it much lighter than the usual iron block V8s. This gave it an edge in races. It gets technical. The engine was cast by the Winters Foundry in Canton, Ohio, and only about 300 of these blocks were ever made. This made the ZL1 extremely rare and highly sought after. Fred Gibb, a Chevrolet dealer, played a big part in getting the engine into the 1969 Camaro. He used the COPO system to convince Chevrolet to produce 50 special ZL1 Camaros for NHRA drag racing. But because the engine was so expensive, almost doubling the price of a regular Camaro, only 69 ZL1 Camaros and 2 Corvettes were built. Facts you missed: the ZL1 was discontinued because it was too expensive and not very practical for everyday buyers. Many of the Camaros built with this engine were returned by dealers, and only a few remained. In the 1990s, Chevrolet brought the ZL1 engine back with some improvements, but it was still not the same as the original. Today, the 1969 ZL1 Camaros are extremely valuable and can sell for over $500,000, making them one of the most coveted muscle cars ever built. 8. Chevrolet 427 Z11. The Chevrolet 427 Z11 engine was one of the most powerful V8s ever created by General Motors. It was developed in 1963 and produced 430 horsepower and 575 pound-feet of torque. This engine was designed to beat competitors like the Chrysler 426 Hemi and Ford's 429 V8. What made the 427Z11 so special was its performance. It had a larger stroke than other engines and used a dual 4-barrel carburetor system, which helped it suck in more air and fuel, making it faster. It was built for the Chevrolet Impala, but only a few cars were made for drag racing. Check this out. The Z11 engine was a beast on the drag strip. With its lightweight body and powerful engine, it could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 4.3 seconds and run a 10.8-second quarter mile. However, it was never allowed to be used in regular production cars. In 1963, General Motors decided to ban all engines over 400 cubic inches in its intermediate cars, limiting their performance. This decision helped brands like Mopar take the lead in the muscle car wars. Surprise! Surprise again! Chevrolet had an incredible engine in the Z11, but due to the company's restrictions, it couldn't be used in the Camaro or Chevelle. This decision stopped the Z11 from becoming a legendary engine in more cars, and it left the door open for competitors to dominate the muscle car era. 9. Chevrolet 409 5.8. The Chevrolet 409 V8 was an engine that became famous for its power and performance. Introduced in 1961, the 409 was a larger version of the earlier 348 engine. With a displacement of 409 cubic inches, it had more power and torque than the 348, which made it very appealing for racing. The engine could produce up to 400 horsepower, making it a serious contender in the muscle car world. Time for numbers. The 409 engine was designed with a special W shape to the valve covers, which gave it a unique look. It had a large 4.312-inch bore and a 3.50-inch stroke, and its compression ratio was 11.25 to 1. This engine used iron block and head castings with forged steel crankshafts and connecting rods, which helped it handle high power. It became popular in the Chevrolet Impala and other models. The truth unfolds. However, the 409 engine's power led to its downfall in racing. The engine was too advanced and powerful for the regulations at the time. It was banned from certain racing events, like NASCAR, because it didn't meet the required specifications for stock production engines. The engine was also disqualified because it didn't match the advertised 409 cubic inches. Some versions were actually larger. This ban led to the discontinuation of the 409 V8, and it was soon replaced by other engines like the 427. The 409's potential was never fully realized in competition due to these restrictions. 10. Chevrolet Fuel Injected 327. The Chevrolet FI 327 was a special engine introduced in 1962 for the Corvette. It was a fuel-injected version of the 327 cubic inch V8 and was known for its impressive performance. This engine produced 360 horsepower and 352 pound-feet of torque. It was designed to give the Corvette more power and make it one of the fastest cars on the road at the time. The engine used a mechanical fuel injection system which was advanced for its day. Despite its powerful performance, the FY 327 didn't last long. By mid-1965, Chevrolet stopped offering it. The reason for this was mostly because of cost and maintenance issues. Fuel injection was much more expensive than a regular carburetor, and buyers were not willing to pay the extra money for just a small increase in horsepower. The fuel injection system also required special care and attention, and many mechanics at the time didn't have the skills to maintain it properly. As a result, many owners had the fuel injection system removed and replaced with a simpler carburetor. Things took a turn. Chevrolet realized that big block V8 engines, like the 396, were a better choice for the Corvette. These engines were cheaper and easier to maintain, and they provided plenty of power. The fuel-injected 327 was eventually replaced by the 396 by V8, marking the end of the F1 327. This decision was surprising because the FY 327 had so much potential, but it was simply too expensive and difficult for most people to keep running smoothly. 11. Chevrolet 302, small block with cross-ram intake. The Chevrolet 302 small block V8 with the cross-ram intake was a special engine introduced for racing. It was designed to increase horsepower, especially at high speeds. This engine was used in the Camaro Z/28, helping it perform well in racing competitions like Trans Am. The cross-ram intake was unique because it had two carburetors, which helped the engine breathe better and get more power. The engine's specs were impressive, with a 302 cubic inch displacement and a high revving power band, making it perfect for racing. However, despite its power, the cross-ram intake had some problems. The design was focused on high RPM performance, which worked great on the racetrack, but not so well on regular roads. It had poor low-end torque, which made it harder to drive in everyday conditions. This led to the Trans Am Racing Series banning the use of the cross-ram intake. They decided it wasn't suitable for normal driving, and it didn't work well for the average driver. What happened next? The shocking truth behind this ban is that the intake was made for racing only, and GM had to make sure that racing cars stayed competitive while using parts that were available to everyone. Although the cross-ram intake helped the Camaro Z/28 win, it was never allowed in production cars. It was a racing-specific part and had to be installed by owners after buying the car, making it a rare and expensive addition. 12. Chevrolet Supercharged LT5. The Chevrolet Supercharged LT5 engine was a powerful machine known for its incredible 755 horsepower and 715 pound-feet of torque. It was part of the 2019 Corvette ZR1, which was designed to be one of the fastest and most powerful cars. The LT5 engine was special because it featured a supercharger, which helped it produce more power. Compared to its sibling, the LT4, the LT5 had a larger supercharger and a more powerful setup, delivering more boost and torque. Not so fast, the LT5 engine was discontinued in 2021. The reason behind this surprising move was its high production cost. Building the LT5 was expensive, and even though it was a top performer, not enough people bought it to make up for the costs. GM decided it wasn't worth continuing production. In addition, GM was focusing on new technology, such as electric motors, and competing with other manufacturers like Mopar, who had powerful engines like the Elephant. Unfortunately, though LT5 was loved by car enthusiasts, it couldn't compete with the newer trends in car development. General Motors made the decision to stop offering it as a crate engine because it was too costly to keep producing. Although the LT5 was a beast of an engine, it couldn't overcome the challenges of sales and changing car technology. Now, the LT5 is no longer available, and those who want it might have to pay a premium for the remaining engines out there. 13. Chevrolet Mark V 396 Big Block. The Chevrolet Mark V 396 Big Block engine was a powerful piece of machinery that made a huge impact in the muscle car world. Introduced in 1965, it featured a 396 cubic inch engine with a compression ratio of 11:1, which made it capable of producing 425 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. The engine was used in many of Chevrolet's muscle cars, including the Corvette, Impala, and Chevelle. It had a solid lifter cam, forged crankshaft, and 4-bolt main caps, all of which contributed to its performance. However, the Mark V 396's time was short-lived. The real reason behind its discontinuation was not a ban, but rather a combination of racing rules and internal decisions by General Motors. NASCAR's regulations limited engine sizes for certain categories, and GM's own internal policy restricted the use of engines larger than 400 cubic inches in mid-sized cars. This made it difficult to continue producing the 396 big block, especially since GM was focusing on smaller engines for more affordable cars. But here's the truth. 396's potential was limited by these rules, and GM decided to phase it out in favor of other engines. Even though it was a performance legend, the 396 could not compete with the changing landscape of racing and GM's need to meet regulations. It was a tough decision, but ultimately, the Mark V 396 Big Block was discontinued as GM moved on to new engine designs. 14. Chevrolet LS 7 454. Back in the 1970s, Chevrolet had something really special, a powerful engine called the Chevrolet LS 7454. It was part of the Big Block family and was known for its incredible strength. The LS7 had a huge 454 cubic inch size with a 4.25-inch bore and a 4.00-inch stroke. That made it a beast under the hood, ready to roar with 500 horsepower. It had cool parts like titanium intake valves and strong forged steel rods, making it one of the toughest engines around. But here comes the twist. This amazing engine never made it into regular cars. You see, the LS7 was supposed to be in production cars, but government rules and the gas crisis made that difficult. At the time, people started caring more about fuel-saving cars, and rules were getting stricter about engine power and pollution. So instead of selling it in cars, Chevrolet made it a crate engine, which means people could still buy it to build race cars or special projects. It didn't last. Even though it was never banned, it quietly disappeared from the spotlight. The truth is, it was too powerful and arrived at the wrong time. Fuel prices were rising, and Chevrolet had to think about smaller, cleaner engines. The LS 7454 stayed in crates for years like a sleeping giant, and when someone opened 1 year later, it was like going back in time to when power ruled the roads. 15. Chevrolet Dual Overhead Cam LT5 V8. The Chevrolet Dual Overhead Cam LT5 V8 was one of the most special engines ever made, but it was also one of the most mysterious. It wasn't banned, but it vanished quietly, and the truth is pretty surprising. The LT5 was made for the Corvette ZR1 in the late 1980s and early 1990s. It was super advanced, with 2 camshafts on top and 4 valves per cylinder. Numbers don't lie. It could make 375 horsepower and rev really high, all the way to 7,000 RPM. Specs say it all. This engine wasn't like other V8s. It was made with help from Lotus, a British car company. It had aluminum parts, wet cylinder liners, and even 2 sets of intake valves that worked at different engine speeds. Below 3,000 RPM, 1 set worked. After that, the second set kicked in and gave the car a real push. The computer that controlled it was the biggest and most complex GM had ever used. So, what went wrong? The engine was very expensive to build, very tricky to produce, and didn't share any parts with other GM engines. Sales of the Corvette were going down, and GM was working on newer engines like the LS1, which were cheaper and easier to make. Even though it was never banned, the LT5 disappeared because it was just too much for its time. People still remember it as a wild idea that almost changed everything, but got left behind. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.